Everyone. I wanted to do this video last month after I got back from Oahu, but a mixture of jet lag and a bad cough. I'll put a hold on that. But here I am, and it's one of those days again. You might think that with had so much improvements in quality in both the big and the small screen, and that we're kind of in a new golden age for video game adaptations, and I would say, well, yes and no. While there are ones like The Last of Us and Fallout making Prestige TV, Knuckles being dang fun, and to say nothing of the success of Super Mario 23, the Sonic Trilogy, and Detective Pikachu, regrettably, bad video game adaptations are still very much a thing, as I'm about to demonstrate here with the subject today. Last year's adaptation of Borderlands. Yeah, I mean, since my favorite movies of the previous summer were Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine, and this was probably my least favorite. I mean, the first time I watched it, when I knew a guy, I didn't even make it all the way through. I actually shut it off around the halfway point, but since I saw this movie on my plane back alongside Craig Before the Creek and Detective Pikachu again, thought I might talk about it and point out what went wrong and what could be improved if slash when they decide to just reboot this, which given the equivalent box office receipts, it seems highly likely. At least not right now. First, the positives. The movie is thankfully not very long, only about an hour and 40 minutes, so it's not going to wreck your whole day if you do decide to watch your bad movie fix. And for all the technical issues and changes I will be getting into, the costume and prop design is actually pretty solid. A lot of stuff would not be out of place at a fan convention, and especially in the case of the guns, which there are many ones from the games included here. If a lot of them look like they were 3D printed from Gearbox's actual databanks, that's because they were, as they confirmed on their social feeds. And the score is actually pretty alright, as Dieter Blonsky's B material goes. I'll be getting into the uses from the pop songs, but the songs themselves on their own are not bad, even if they are familiar staples like Motorhead's Ace of Spades, among quite a few others. Now, let's get to it. As has been well documented now, the film's production was incredibly troubled, and it's something you can see in the final product. Notably, Craig Mazin actually left the project due to creative differences with the with Joe Crombie completing the script. It's still not clear whether or not it's an actual person or simply a pseudonym used by the studio. Either way, would you want to take credit for this? I personally wouldn't. And especially, it definitely has a vibe of having too many cooks in the proverbial kitchen, because the film had not one, not two, not even three, but a record 18 executive producers, including two of which were at Gearbox, Alex Randy Vernell, and self-proclaimed magician Randy Pitchford, who I guess has the power to make over $120 million disappear here, as well as 2K Strauss Zelnick. Not a bit surprised that he and the Randys are as thick as thieves. And also, he attempts to retool the very animated source material into non-R-rated film, which would be the most logical sense, given how the youngest people playing the games you would hope at least are at least 17 and want to see an R-rated film. Intro Peach of the Teen intended to broaden the audience, even having the film reshot by a Deadpool and Terminator Fate's Tim Miller to try and achieve that effect. As, to surprise no one but the people in charge, it backfired. The younger audiences they're expecting didn't go, and older audiences who were fans of the games to the business elsewhere, I personally decided to buy my ticket to Alien Ramen as well as see Deadpool Wolverine again. And I say this as someone who played all three main games, as well as spin offs such as Tina's Wonderland and the pre-sequel, my personal favorite, the narrative adventure Tales from the Borderlands. And I don't want to talk about the sequel, but I will say this: given how that game from Telltale had the Italian voice actors Patrick Warburton and Christopher Parnell involved, I would have liked to have seen like an offbeat anime adult show based on 90mm Randy Knight. The idea, think something like Cyberpunk Edge Runners or Far Cry Blood Dragon, and not too far off the mark, admittedly. And naturally, the film was a massive box office bomb, costing $120 million to make, another $30 million to market. And only making back a fraction of that worldwide. With the film actually making less than $10 million its opening weekend. And, which again, competition's pretty stiff, I'd say. And to put this in proper context of how long it took to come out, they made their cast reveal at the last E3 in 2021, which, as my son said at the time, was certainly a choice. I'll get into why in a bit. And it was actually wrapped initial production and before stars Kate Blanchett and Ariana Greenblatt's highly acclaimed turns both Tar and Barbie respectively, but did not come out until after said films. They're definitely much better movies, I'll say that much. And with that out of the way, there's no real way for me to explain the other issues without basically spoiling the entire plot, though given how badly anyone saw this movie, I'm not certain you'll care, so let's begin. The film is a very loose retelling of the first game's events, though it also has characters and concepts from the sequels. Though thankfully, the movie itself actually does not have the temerity to taste to a sequel, which, even if they had, it was unlikely to happen given the poor curriculum box office as results. In which a bounty hunter known as Lilith is tasked to rescue a young woman named Tiny Tina, but also gets wrapped up in a reluctant attempt to find a vault, which is assaulted by the head of Atlas. And I know a lot of people lamented that the Atlas was the bad guy in this movie as opposed to Handsome Jack or even Commandant Steele, for that matter. Though, given how this turned out and the way they handled the other characters, I'm actually glad that was not the case. Especially one thing that is clear, it's basically they managed to get elements of Guardians of the Galaxy and Mad Max Fury Road, but way worse. In the latter case, he's actually he pointed out that the Furiosa movie was a better Borderlands movie than the actual one, especially with the way they handled different factions, the cars, and the weapons. And oh yes, how creative some of the ultraviolence was. And in regards to the former, it also took so long to come out. The entire trilogy had actually wrapped up, and James Gunn actually moved on to the DCU, with works such as Creature Commandos and had anticipated Superman. But even in the super wacky world of the DOTG trilogy, there was still moments of tangible nuance in an emotional way. Even before all the laughs came, each member of the teams had been touched by tragedy in some way, with Peter losing being a parent and getting abducted by aliens on the exact same day. Hey, they try to do something similar with Lilith here, but it doesn't really work as well. Even Tan is just kind of like our collector, right down to having an award or nominated and winning performer in a very bizarre costume. This case being Jamie Lee Curtis, who was just coming off her roles in the Halloween reboot trilogy and everything, everywhere, all at once, man. Other cast members include, who again, the aforementioned Greenblatt as Tiny Tina, who may not be as crazy as her variant from the games, does still share counterparts, her its handiness with improvised explosives, may not be blowing up any trains around, but she does have plenty of grenades hidden in plush rabbits and bears. We also have Florian Montiano as one of the psychos, but not as. It's basically kind of like our Drax, being like a big lummox played by someone who started as a wrestler with admittedly awkward social skills, with also Tina also having some elements of Rocket Raccoon by way of the DCU variant of Harley Quinn, and Kevin Hart is playing Roland. I know age was a bit of been tricky to do. Who was okay? So Krieg is who he's playing here. Montiano, who. But if I had to actually pick someone, I would imagine as Roland, I would have gone with Ving Rhames, or Winston Duke, who not only resemble Roland a bit, but they're just really good at playing like the whole big tug out of the heart of gold incredibly well. And because of the way that Borderlands is as a game franchise, everyone has their preferred character and weapon loadout, with my go-to one being in the cyborg spy archetype, which is definitely an issue. We have a game that is built on openness and player choice being contorted into the needs of a much more linear plot with more fixed objectives, as where. And at the very least, I can understand Blanchett's reasoning for wanting to take the part with COVID madness, and this meaning that she would be willing to take anything. I also don't blame her for doing other ones. Like, sometimes just go where the work is, and she definitely is an actress that understands the whole one for them, one for me approach to movie making, at the very least. And a lot of the casting as a whole is as better. Like, even when declaring that some of the characters who went on screen are actually in there, but others claim they were just stage hands like a Revolt, and these make the approach, and we will get to that. It also is kind of interesting, like, when they actually go to find information on the next clue, and in the market stall is Bobby Lee from Mad TV as Larry, one of the few people who seems to be enjoying themselves, and of all people of Mad Moxie, which, given how it's the way the set is decorated, implies it's still in the same kind of archetype she's in the games, serving drinks and turning tricks, is played by Gina Gershon, and her presence reminds me a lot of the infamous Showgirls, which is another overhyped flop, turned cult classic. And before I start wrapping up here, before I have dinner, I will just say this. I'm not gonna be surprised if it ends up becoming like another one like Street Fighter 94 or Madam Web, where it's, yes, it's bad, but it's entertaining kind of bad, man. I mean, that's like with Eli Roth. Love his movies or hate them, you guarantee that no two people are going to have the same opinion on him or his work. I mean, a lot of people like his Thanksgiving movie, which is the one he let the research of this one to do. I personally consider it a cinematic turkey, which is what like an older term for a bad movie, but get ahead of myself. So after a few who very choppy looking gunfights, hates, and a lot of chaos in the sewers, hers, which include the usage of the heaviest How You Like Me Now, and chocolate cons like sugar, her. They do make their way to a location, the vault, and there was much rejoicing. Yay. Atlas's threat of having overshield is not really much when anyone has those. Another missed opportunity they had is also not include like the new you tech from the games where every time you respawn on for a little bit of the cash you have on you, you'll be given a whole new body exactly the way it was, with your memories even. Kind of like something that I can make a 17 a much better movie, a, where that was actually a perfect opportunity to satirize how if people could monetize resurrection, they would, and also explore what kind of effects that would have on a person's psyche to have their body getting more or less turned into like a ketchup stain on the floor, or only to be reassembled with all the memories intact. I mean, that's instead we get basically what was one of the strangest decisions in the movie be to treat Lilith being of reading descent and the key to the vault as a twist, even though it's quite literally one of the first things you learn about her in the games. It'd basically be like if you're watching in Sonic 3 and Shadow just casually said, by the way, hey Sonic, I'm the ultimate life form, and he just says, so you are. Or if you were watching Detective Pikachu, who and they just outright said, like, hey, I am really your dad, Tim. Um, and Tim just goes, so you are. I mean, it's still, so, I mean, it's obviously not exactly like the reveal of, say, like, who were the key allies hiding out in the Fox timeline, from the Fox timeline, the Void, in Deadpool Wolverine, or Joy putting a hand on Anxiety's shoulder, her saying that it's okay. Hey, Riley, it needs us both. Let go. And but still, it's another situation that after like Alice is defeated, and Lilith masters her Viridian heritage, we cue the big fireworks. Basically, he kind of like the Endor celebration of Return of the Jedi, minus anything that made that finale feel earned, main, and as much rejoicing. Yay. So, yeah, this was not a good film, by any usual metric. At the very least, I'm glad that they did confirm that the upcoming fourth game is going to be M-rated. A lot of people were not really big on the teen-rated spin-offs, and how that kind of dampen all those games' impacts. But even though it was a theatrical flop, it did find an ironic audience at home. again, like Madam Web or Street Fighter 94, or which definitely he brings us to like an early era video game filmmaking, where they were often dumpster fires, but under the right circumstances, but they had a bunch of friends in person or and nowadays over like a web chat, having a cold beverage, it's entertaining dumpster fire here. I mean, and as for Jack Black as Claptrap, he obviously was no Bowser like in Mario 23, and that worked because, well, it was Bowser and there's a precedent for being comedic ones in the good in the games before and since. But my understanding about why they cast him was because that the original voice actors from the games not on speaking terms with Randy. Short version and is like once they're both accusing each other of mistreatment and not really being handling the money that well. So believe me, there'll be another time to talk about why even though I like him as an actor, I don't think he's been in every movie, and certainly don't think he needs to be in every video game movie either. And as I was saying, this is not what I would deem a good movie, but it is one I can file personally under one of the more entertaining bad movies I've seen, especially as someone who has gone through not all of it, but a fair amount of the IMDb Bottom 100 on certain nights where I am personally of a mind that if you give me a choice between a bad movie that's boring and a bad movie that's a white hot trash fire, I always choose the latter because one is something more entertaining to watch, the other is like about as entertaining as like watching in your beard grow. And yeah, anyway, that'll be all for now, and this will not be the only video game adaptation I talk about in the near future. And if you pay attention to my community tab, you definitely have some idea of what I might like to address before my review of Sonic 3 goes live in a couple weeks. So, take care, everyone.